In ancient Egypt, death could be a blessing. The real punishment was being forced to live. We all know the legends, the pharaohs, the pyramids, the gold, the gods. It was a civilization obsessed with eternity, with building a legacy that would outlast the sun itself. But for all their grandeur, for all their advancements in art and science, the ancient Egyptians had a truly dark side. A justice system that was less about rehabilitation and more about creative, brutal, and agonizing punishment. Today we're pulling back the gilded curtain. We're descending into the dusty cells and the sun-baked courtyards where justice was served not with a swift blade, but with a slow, grinding cruelty. This isn't just about how they killed you. This is about the 15 brutal ways ancient Egypt made you die slowly. This was justice, and we're starting with a punishment so psychologically terrifying it could break a person before a single hand was laid on them. 1. The living tomb, a burial of consciousness. Imagine being sealed alive, not in a coffin, but in a small, dark, airless chamber. The weight of the earth is above you. The only sound is your own frantic breathing, growing quicker as the oxygen begins to fade. This was a fate reserved for the highest-profile offenders, traitors, conspirators against the pharaoh, those who committed the ultimate sacrilege. They weren't just executed, they were erased. They were given food and water, yes, perhaps just enough to prolong the suffering. They would sit in that absolute darkness, feeling the seconds turn into hours, the hours into days. Their world would shrink to the four walls of their own personal hell. They would die of dehydration, of starvation, or simply of sheer, unadulterated terror, their screams absorbed by the stone. It was a slow, conscious unraveling, a prelude to the final judgment they believed was coming. But what if your crime wasn't against the state, but against the gods themselves? For that, the Egyptians devised a punishment that was even more final. 2. The second death, eternal oblivion. The ancient Egyptians didn't fear death. They feared the second death, the destruction of the soul in the afterlife. Their entire culture was built around preserving the body and the name to ensure a successful journey through the duat, the underworld. The worst punishment, therefore, wasn't physical, it was metaphysical. For crimes like temple robbery or desecrating a sacred site, you could be sentenced to damnation. Your name would be systematically chiseled off every monument, every statue, every scroll. Your tomb would be defiled, your mummy destroyed. You were not just killed, you were unmade from history. The belief was that without a name or a body for the soul to recognize, your essence would be cast into chaos, devoured by the demoness Amit, and cease to exist for all eternity. You died in this world, and you were condemned to die again in the next. A slow spiritual annihilation that lasted forever. 3. The amputation of identity. In a society where your profession was your identity, the loss of the tool of your trade was a social and physical death sentence. Were you a scribe who forged documents? Say goodbye to the fingers that held the brush. A soldier who showed cowardice. The hand that held the shield would be severed. A thief? You can guess what happened. This wasn't just about causing pain, it was about ritual humiliation and rendering you useless. A one-handed man couldn't fight, a fingerless man couldn't write. You were cast out, a burden to your family, forced to live a life of begging and shame. The physical wound might heal, but the stigma never would. You died slowly, not from blood loss, but from the erosion of your very place in the world. But sometimes the punishment was far more specific to the crime. 4. The 100-cut rule and the 5-wound standard. The Egyptians had a bizarre, almost bureaucratic approach to corporal punishment. Legal texts talk about the 100-cut rule or the 5-wound standard. Imagine being found guilty of a crime, let's say stealing grain. The sentence isn't prison, it's 100 lashes, or 5 open wounds. The brutality is in the numbers. This was a slow, systematic dismantling of the body. You weren't beaten until you stopped moving. You were beaten until the count was reached. The whip, the rod, the cane, they would fall over and over, turning your back into a bloody pulp. The shock, the infection, the long, painful recovery if you even survived, it was a living, breathing nightmare of pain, administered by the cold, unfeeling hand of the law. And for those in power who failed, The fall was even more spectacular. 5. The fall of the high official. The higher you climbed in ancient Egypt, the farther you had to fall. A vizier or a nobleman who embezzled tax money or failed the pharaoh wouldn't just be executed. His entire life's work was undone. His statues were smashed. His lavish tomb, the house he built for eternity, was confiscated and given to a loyal follower. His family could be stripped of their titles and wealth. He was forced to watch as everything he had built, every monument to his own glory, was systematically dismantled. Then he would often be given a choice: a quick, honorable suicide or the disgrace of a public execution. It was a psychological torture that played out over weeks or months, a slow-motion destruction of a legacy, culminating in a final shameful end. But let's get back to the physical, because the Egyptians were true artists of agony, and they had a particular obsession with one part of the body. 6. The price of hearing: severed ears. Ears. Why ears? Because in a world without mass media, you heard the law. You listened to the commands of your superiors. To have your ears cut off was a permanent visible mark of a liar, a disobedient soldier, or a slave who didn't listen. It was a mutilation you couldn't hide. You would walk through the streets for the rest of your life, your disfigurement announcing to everyone you met that you were a criminal. It was a slow, social death, a constant reminder of your transgression with every sidelong glance and every whispered insult. 7. The slit nose, a breath of shame. The nose was the breath of life. To have it slit or cut off entirely was not only excruciatingly painful, but it was also a symbolic gesture of taking your life force. This punishment was famously common for adultery. Imagine the aftermath. Every breath you take for the rest of your life is a rasping, difficult reminder of your crime. Your face is permanently disfigured. The wound is highly susceptible to fatal infection. You are shunned, ugly, and broken. It was a sentence that kept on giving every single day until your eventual miserable death. And for women, the system of justice could be even more cruel and targeted. 8. The gynecology of punishment. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, one of our oldest medical texts, gives us a chilling glimpse into a specific punishment for women. It describes a procedure involving the manipulation of the uterus as a form of punishment, likely for sexual crimes or infertility, which was often seen as a woman's fault. The details are vague but horrifying. It suggests a physical intervention so violent it could cause permanent damage, chronic pain, and of course, the ultimate shame in a society that valued children above all else. 9. Banishment to the Red Land. The Egyptians lived in the Black Land, the fertile strip along the Nile. Beyond that was the Red Land, the vast deadly desert. To be banished was to be cast out from the source of all life, from the gods themselves, and into the domain of chaos, demons, and certain death. You were sent out with nothing. The sun would bake you, the sand would scour your skin. You would die of thirst, be eaten by wild animals, or simply disappear, your body never found, denying you the proper burial rites needed for the afterlife. It was a slow, existential death sentence, watching the world of the living fade away behind you as you walked into nothingness. And for those who couldn't afford a quick end, there was a fate that made the desert look merciful. 10. The living death of the mines. If you were a slave, a prisoner of war, or a convicted criminal, the state had a special hell reserved for you, the gold mines of Nubia or the turquoise mines of the Sinai. This was a death sentence with a timetable. You would be worked, shirtless and barefoot, in cramped, hot and dust-filled tunnels. The dust itself would shred your lungs, leading to a slow, suffocating death from silicosis. Cave-ins were common. Overseers with heavy whips ensured you never stopped working. You were worked until your body gave out, and then you were discarded. It was a brutal, industrial-scale grinding of human lives into profit, a slow extinction in the dark. But what about the children? Surely they were spared. 11. The sins of the father. In ancient Egypt, guilt could be a family affair. If a man committed a grave crime like treason, his entire family, wife, children, siblings, could be punished alongside him. They could be enslaved, their property seized, their lives utterly destroyed for a crime they didn't commit. A child could wake up a free person and go to sleep a slave, simply because of their father's actions. Their future, their freedom, Their very identity was stripped away in an instant, forcing them to live a long, hard life of servitude as payment for a debt they never owed. The punishment for the criminal was swift, but for his family, it was a generational curse, a slow-burning legacy of shame. 12. The taxman's wrath. Failed to pay your taxes in ancient Egypt, and you weren't just facing a fine. You and your family could be subjected to a brutal public beating. The state's enforcers would come to your village and make an example of you. The pain was bad enough, but the humiliation was worse. Afterwards, you were still expected to pay the tax, now with your body broken and your reputation in tatters. It was a powerful, terrifying incentive to never ever fall behind, ensuring a slow, grinding poverty and fear for anyone living on the edge. 13. The crocodile's jaws. There are tales, though debated by historians, of a punishment so terrifying it feels like a myth. A criminal, often a murderer, could be bound and thrown into a pit of Nile crocodiles. The crocodile was the embodiment of the god Sobek, a creature of immense power and fury. This wasn't just an execution, it was a sacrifice. It was a symbolic delivery of the guilty party to divine judgment. The death was violent and horrific, a slow, thrashing dismemberment in the murky water. It was the ultimate expression of the state's power to not only kill you, but to feed you to the gods. And finally, we come to the most insidious punishment of all. 14. The silent, slow poison. In the halls of power, a dagger in the dark was too obvious. The preferred tool for assassination and discreet punishment was poison. A slow-acting, untraceable poison administered over weeks or months in food or drink. The victim would simply waste away. They'd experience fatigue, stomach pains, a gradual failure of the body. There would be no culprit, no dramatic death scene. Just a slow, mysterious decline that everyone would whisper about, but no one could prove. 15 brutal ways your life could become a living hell in the land of the pharaohs. But this begs the question, why? Why such a focus on slow, agonizing punishment? It all comes back to their core beliefs. Ma'at, the concept of order, truth, and justice, was the foundation of the universe. A crime wasn't just a breaking of a man-made law, it was a tear in the very fabric of reality. It was an act of isfet, or chaos. A swift death was too good for someone who threatened the cosmic balance. The punishment had to be a proportional, forceful act of rebalancing. It had to be a public spectacle to deter others. The next time you look at a picture of the serene Sphinx or the majestic pyramids, remember what lay beneath the gold and the sandstone. Remember the lives slowly, painfully extinguished in the name of order. The echoes of their suffering are the dark foundation upon which this glittering civilization was built. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed learning about the dark side of ancient Egypt, give this video a like, share it with fellow history fans, and don't forget to subscribe for more mind-blowing stories from the past.